Well, it's finally here, the start of the regular season. The Eagles open up tomorrow against the Cleveland Browns. Hey, Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my preview for the Eagles-Browns game tomorrow afternoon. Here's the way I'm looking at this game. Before last week, before they traded Sam Bradford, I had no expectations for this season. If you watched my prediction video last week, you know that I had said that I predicted the Eagles finish 6-10. I had said before they had done the Sam Bradford deal, I had pegged them at 7-9, so it really only changed it by about a game. So really, it didn't change my expectations in terms of where they finally end up at the end of this season. But what it has done is it's changed my excitement level. I'm a lot more excited now for this season because we get to see the progress of Carson Wentz and to see exactly where he's going to go. And the reason I'm so excited about that is if you look back at the Eagles historically over the last 6 years, really since we let go of Donovan McNabb. Donovan McNabb's last season with the Eagles was 2009. Coincidentally, the Eagles' last playoff win was in 2008. Since McNabb left in 2009, we've had 6 seasons. During that time, the Eagles have had 6 different starting quarterbacks. They are in order of the number of starts they've had. Michael Vick had the most, then followed by Nick Foles, then Sam Bradford, then Mark Sanchez, then Kevin Kolb, and finally, with only 3 starts, was Vince Young. So really, we've gone through a lot of different quarterbacks. Now, some of those obviously were just backups that played a couple games like the Vince Youngs and the Mark Sanchez's of the world. But still, it shows that we've had a lot of turnover at the quarterback position. The Eagles really haven't figured out a long-term solution at quarterback since Donovan McNabb has left. And one of the things that I really had been saying at the end of last season, going into the draft, is the Eagles need to figure out what they're doing long-term at the quarterback position. I didn't think Sam Bradford was the solution, and obviously the Eagles didn't either. So I'm really excited that they're finally going to focus on the quarterback position, developing someone young who's going to be able to be there, hopefully, for the long term. So let's talk about what exactly to expect in this game tomorrow against the Browns. In terms of the preseason, first of all, you can never really take anything from the preseason. Granted, they finished 4-0. The last time the Eagles finished 4-0 in the preseason was 2012. That was Andy Reid's last season when they ended up going 4-12 through the season. So really, the preseason is no indicator of how they're going to end up in the regular season. I specifically draw some parallels from this to the first year of Ray Rhodes in 1995 when he came in and the Eagles went 4-0 in the preseason. Everyone thought, hey, this is it. We finally got a system that's going to work. Randall Cunningham was still the quarterback. They were putting him into the West Coast system, and he looked fairly decent in it. And everyone thought, hey, this is going to be a long-term solution. Well, then it turns, and even the first game sort of has some parallels because it's a game everyone just figures they're going to win because it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when the Buccaneers were a lousy team, and everyone just assumed that that was going to be a win. They had come off a 4-0 preseason, they had a new coach, a new system, and everything looked good in the preseason, and then what happens, that's the for who, for what game of Ricky Watters against the Buccaneers, and the Eagles laid an egg and lost. Now ultimately that season turned out all right because they ended up as a wild card berth in that year. But the start of that season was rocky, and it ended up being that Randall Cunningham wasn't even the quarterback going forward. That after a couple games he was replaced, and Rodney Peete began and became the quarterback for the remainder of that season. So it's really sort of an interesting dynamic and parallel. I know there's a lot of differences between that team and this team, but ultimately I think that there is something to be taken from the fact that the preseason really is no indicator, that some 4-0 preseasons we've had in the past have turned out to be not real indicators of where we ended up. And I don't think that just because we were 4-0 in the preseason and we're playing against the Cleveland Browns, a lousy team, that we can automatically count this as a win. In fact, week 1 games are difficult to predict anyway because there's really no way to know how a team is going to perform based on where they were in the preseason or where they even were last year, especially when you have 2 teams coming into this game like the Eagles and Browns where both of them have different head coaches, both of them have different starting quarterbacks. So it's really difficult to say what kind of team that they're going to be. So it's difficult to really make a prediction based on that. But of course, I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. And really, I think what it comes down to is, even though everything I said, I'm still going to pick the Eagles to win this game. When I had done my prediction video, I had said that I thought that this was a game the Eagles could win. If there is a game that you want Carson Wentz to start out, this is probably a good one because the Cleveland defense is not that good. But that's one of the things that, as we take a look at everything, let's keep in the back of our minds that it really is lots of times difficult to predict these Week 1 games because there's so many unknowns. One of the reasons I'm going to go ahead and pick the Eagles in this game is because the Cleveland Browns were dreadful against the run last year. They were 30th in yards per game allowed on the ground, and they were 29th in total points. So that's passing and rushing. So if you look at that, it really is not a good defense that we're going to be playing against. Now, all that said, you have to look at the Eagles' defense last year, and we weren't much better. In fact, when you look at the rushing yards per game, the Cleveland Browns were 30th, but 31st with the Saints and 32nd was the Eagles. So the Eagles are right down there with the Browns in yards per game. And even though the Browns were 29th in points, we were only 28th in points. So we weren't much better in terms of points per game either. So from that perspective, it's really difficult to say that the Eagles' defense is going to be a lot better. But I think there is one big difference between this season and last season when it comes to the Eagles' defense. Granted, there's been a coaching staff change in both places, but I think the bigger coaching staff change is going to be with the Eagles. I like Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator, but it has less to do with Jim Schwartz than the fact that Chip Kelly isn't going to be calling the offensive plays, and the defense isn't going to be expected to play 35-plus minutes on the field. I think that's really what hurt us, especially against the run game, because teams knew they could just ground it out on the ground and eat up chunks of time and make our defense play for long periods of time, and it just wore our defense down to the point where we were basically very ineffective against the run. So I think really if you look at the way the Eagles are built this season, using a different defensive system and with a different guy calling the plays on the other side of the ball, I really think our defense is going to be a lot more improved, not based on changes in personnel, but changed on the coaching. So when you look at the running game for both teams, looking at the Browns, I don't even recognize their running backs. Isaiah Crowell's their starting running back. I never even really heard of him. The Eagles do have some real weapons, I think, at running back, and I think that that's one of the things the Eagles need to do, especially with a rookie quarterback. They need to rely on their running game. This is, I think, going to be a real test for Doug Peterson to see if he is a lot different than Andy Reid. Andy Reid, of course, was so pass happy all the time. So hopefully Doug Peterson knows that he needs to stick with the running game and really ground the ball out. And I think against this defense, with our offensive line being fully healthy, with guys like Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles and Barner to come in and spell them as well, I really think that we can get something going on the ground. I expect the running game to be really good. Ultimately, the quarterbacks are going to have to make plays, and if you look at the two quarterbacks in this game, it's really completely different stories. But very similar stories. Both were second picks in the draft, but obviously RG3 has gone through a little bit different path than maybe most second-round picks in the draft would end up going through. He's now with his second team, so he's looking to sort of restart his career. But ultimately, the story on RG3 is if you can get pressure on him, he gets very uncomfortable in the pocket. Maybe he has some of that mobility back and be able to make some plays with his feet. But I think if the Eagles are able to get some pressure on him, that's going to be really important for us to have success against their offense. And that's really where I think Fletcher Cox is potentially going to have a really big game. He's one of the best defensive tackles in football, and he's going up against an offensive line where the interior of the offensive line is not that good. So I would expect Fletcher Cox to be able to get a lot of pressure on RG3, and if that's the case and we can make him uncomfortable, I think we can shut him down enough that their passing game is going to be somewhat ineffective. And one of the things that we've got to be worried about all season is what's on the outside for their wideouts, because our cornerbacks are not that good. But if we can get enough pressure on him, I don't think that's going to be as much of a factor. And I think against this particular team, we can do that so that we won't make RG3 comfortable to be able to have the time to throw those deep passes against our less than stellar cornerbacks. As for our quarterback, I think the key, like I had said earlier, is just keeping the ball on the ground. Asking him to only make a few plays here and there. I really expect them to be able to sort of open up a little bit when they get in the red zone and they can use Dorial Green-Beckham's size. He's shown what he can do, and I think that's one of the things that the Eagles will be able to do and maybe get some confidence with Carson Wentz. Also look for Brett Selleck and Zach Ertz to maybe have some real positive games, looking to the tight ends to make some plays as well. So I think that some of that kind of stuff is really what they can expect of him. I saw a clip from Comcast Sportsnet this past week where they were putting the over-under for Carson Wentz's yardage at 250 yards. And I would take the under on that. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't think he can throw the ball. I think it has everything to do with the fact that I expect the Eagles to run the ball a lot and not ask him to do much. So that's what I would expect. That's what I would hope. And that's what I think ultimately is going to happen in this game. I think we can establish the run early and really eat up a lot of clock and not put a lot of pressure on Carson Wentz to make plays. And if we can do that, I think we can have a lot of success. So my prediction for this game, I think the Eagles win. My final score is going to be Eagles 24, Browns 13. I think the game's a little closer than that, maybe that score would indicate. Maybe something like 17-13 with, we get a long run at the, in the last 5 minutes to really break it open and put the game away. Something like that is sort of the way I expect this game to go down. So that's my prediction. Let me know in the comments below what you think the score of this game is going to be. And then, of course, after the game, I'll check back in and let you know what my thoughts are as we get to see the start of the Carson Wentz era here in Philadelphia. Until then, fly Eagles fly.